What if I told you that many people actually get richer after they retire? Sounds upside down, right? Because most of us imagine retirement as the moment our net worth starts shrinking, like a sand timer running out. Each year, another handful of savings slipping away. But according to real data, a surprising number of retirees watch their wealth grow instead of disappear. So how does that make sense? How can your money pile up even when you're no longer earning a paycheck? Let's break it down. The retirement fear that isn't entirely true. We've all heard it, the great fear of retirement. What if I run out of money? It's the reason people postpone quitting, obsess over stock charts, and treat every dinner out like a financial sin. But here's the twist. Statistically, most retirees don't come close to running out. In fact, the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances shows that the median net worth of households aged 65 to 74 is higher than that of households aged 55 to 64. The older group actually holds more wealth on average. And it's not because they suddenly started making more money. It's because of a few key behavioral and financial forces that quietly kick in once work stops. The myth of exploding retirement expenses. When you think of retirement, you probably picture cruise ships, golf courses, and endless vacations, all those finally free dreams. So it feels logical to assume your expenses will skyrocket once you retire. But reality tells a different story. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found that US households aged 65 to 74 spend about $65,000 per year. By age 75 and older, that number drops to around $53,000. That's nearly a 20% drop, and not because people are broke, it's because their lifestyle naturally simplifies. Why does this happen? Let's look at what's really going on. Travel and leisure start to slow down. The first few years after retirement feel like a long vacation. People travel, dine out, and finally tick off those bucket list experiences. But over time, energy levels dip, long flights become less appealing, and even adventure loses its sparkle. That once-a-year Europe trip? It quietly turns into a weekend road trip. The appeal of your own bed, your own routine, and quiet mornings at home slowly wins. It's not a budget decision, it's comfort taking over. The stay-home effect. Younger retirees often enjoy dining out, concerts, or hobbies that cost money. But as the years go by, staying home feels better than going out. You cook more, watch more, walk more. You don't stop living, you just live differently. And those small shifts add up. When you're not paying for takeout, movie tickets, or gas for endless commutes, your spending drops naturally. Transportation costs plummet. Think about it. No commute, no traffic, no daily grind. You don't need a second car, maybe not even one at all. That's thousands of dollars a year in gas, insurance, maintenance, and depreciation. Gone. Even if you're still active, retirees typically drive less than half as much as working adults, according to AAA data. So even without cutting back intentionally, you're saving big. Healthcare, the one wild card. Yes, healthcare costs can rise as we age, and they often do. But here's the surprise, they rarely offset all the savings from other areas. Fidelity estimates the average retired couple will spend about $315,000 on healthcare over their entire retirement. That sounds scary, but spread over 25 or 30 years, it's about $10,000, $12,000 a year, which is manageable when you consider how much other spending falls. So while healthcare is real, it's not the doomsday monster people imagine. Social Security covers more than you think. Now, let's talk about the secret engine that keeps most retirees financially afloat, Social Security. The average monthly check is about $2,000 per person, or roughly $48,000 a year for a couple. And remember, that income is inflation adjusted and keeps arriving like clockwork every month. So if a retired couple spends $65,000 a year, as the average does between 65 to 74, Social Security already covers about 3/4 of that. Their actual withdrawal need, the amount they pull from investments, is only around $17,000 a year. Not bad, right? That's less than many people spend on a car loan. The shrinking gap. Here's where the math gets really interesting. As retirees age and their spending naturally declines, say from $65,000 to $53,000, the gap between what they need and what Social Security provides narrows even more. That same couple who once needed to withdraw $17,000 a year might later need just $5,000. That's practically pocket change in portfolio terms. The 4% rule, what it really means. Now let's talk about the famous 4% rule, the simple formula for a safe withdrawal rate. It came from a financial planner named Bill Bengen in the 1990s, who studied decades of historical market data, from the Great Depression to 1970s stagflation, and found that if you withdrew 4% of your retirement portfolio each year, adjusted for inflation, your money would almost always last 30 years or more. That rule was based on worst-case scenarios, and interestingly, Bengen later said that in more normal markets, you could probably withdraw closer to 5% safely. So the 4% rule is actually conservative, a kind of "you'll probably be fine even if everything goes wrong" guideline. Why most retirees don't even use the full 4%. Here's the kicker. Most retirees don't even come close to spending that much. The average withdrawal rate in real life hovers around 2 to 3%, according to research by Vanguard. Why? Because of psychology. People spend decades building the habit of saving, being cautious, watching their balance grow. That mindset doesn't switch off the day they retire. If anything, it gets stronger. The fear of "what if I need it later" makes retirees more conservative with money than they realize. So instead of spending down their portfolios, they keep them mostly intact. And as the market grows, so does their wealth. The secret ingredient: flexibility. Now, let's be real. Life doesn't move in straight lines, and neither does spending. The 4% rule assumes you'll spend the exact same amount every year, adjusted for inflation. But do real people live that way? Of course not. If the stock market crashes 30%, you probably skip that cruise and hold off on the kitchen remodel. If inflation spikes, you switch to home-cooked meals instead of dining out. And when the market bounces back, you reward yourself a little. This kind of natural adjustment, what economists call dynamic spending, completely changes the game. By cutting back during downturns and relaxing during good years, retirees stretch their money far longer than the old models predict. The reality behind the shrinking portfolio fear. In theory, retirement is when your nest egg slowly melts away. In reality, it often keeps growing, especially for people who have a mix of stocks, bonds, and real estate. The stock market, historically, has averaged about 10% annual returns. Even if inflation eats up 3%, you're still ahead by 7%. So if you're only withdrawing 2 to 4% each year, your investments are still outpacing your spending. Add that to home values, which historically rise around 3 to 5% per year, and you have a recipe for compound growth, even after you've stopped working. So far, we talked about how retirees often spend less than expected, and how the math behind the 4% rule actually leaves plenty of cushion. But here's where things get really interesting, because the story isn't just about numbers. It's about behavior, about how people think, feel, and act when the paychecks stop coming in. Let's dive into the part most people never talk about: the psychology of retirement wealth. The consumption gap no one tells you about. There's a fascinating pattern researchers have noticed. Even when retirees can spend more, they often don't. Economists call this the consumption gap, the difference between what retirees could spend and what they actually spend. And this gap is surprisingly wide. Studies from the Employee Benefit Research Institute show that after 20 years of retirement, more than half of retirees still have 80% or more of their starting wealth. Some even die with more money than when they retired. Why does this happen? Because habits die hard. After a lifetime of saving, budgeting, and worrying about tomorrow, That cautious mindset doesn't vanish just because the office badge got turned in. Retirees keep watching every rupee, dollar, and cent, not out of necessity, but out of habit and fear. The fear of running out, even when it's not rational. One of the strongest forces in human psychology is loss aversion. We feel the pain of losing money about twice as strongly as the pleasure of gaining it. So, even retirees sitting on large portfolios are often terrified of seeing their balance drop, even temporarily. A market dip, a bad headline, or even a rumor about inflation can trigger that instinctive tightening of the wallet. Better not spend too much this month, they think. And over time, that fear-driven caution leads to underspending. They live comfortably, but far below what they could actually afford. And meanwhile, their investments quietly keep compounding. Compounding doesn't stop when you retire. Here's something people forget. Compound interest doesn't retire when you do. Let's say you retire with $1 million, invested mostly in the S&P 500, which has historically averaged around 10% annual returns. Even if you withdraw $40,000 per year, the classic 4%, your remaining portfolio still earns far more than that on average. Over 10 years, if markets behave even somewhat normally, that portfolio could grow to well over $2 million, even after withdrawals. That's the silent power of compounding, mixed with conservative spending, and it explains why so many retirees end up wealthier than they started. The home that keeps working for you. Then there's real estate. Many retirees own their homes outright by the time they stop working. No mortgage, no rent, just taxes, utilities, and maintenance. And while they live in those homes, something magical happens in the background: appreciation. According to long-term data from the Federal Housing Finance Agency, U.S. home prices have historically risen around 3 to 5% per year. That means a home worth $400,000 at retirement could be worth over $650,000 15 years later, even without lifting a finger. So while retirees worry about shrinking savings, their biggest asset, their home, is often quietly growing in value behind the scenes. The power of not needing much. Here's another truth. Contentment is the ultimate financial advantage. Most retirees discover something they never expected, that happiness doesn't cost as much as they thought. The endless chase for upgrades, status, and the next big thing fades away. Instead, they find joy in simple routines: morning coffee, walks, gardening, time with grandkids. These aren't just sentimental perks, they're financially efficient too. You could say that peace of mind becomes their best investment return. The market's secret ally: flexibility. Remember how we said retirees naturally adjust spending when markets get rough? That's more powerful than most financial models can account for. Let's take two retirees. Retiree A follows a rigid plan: spend $60,000 every year no matter what. Retiree B is flexible: spend $60,000 when the market's strong, $50,000 when it's down. Over 30 years, retiree B is far less likely to run out of money, even if they started with the same amount. Why? Because by withdrawing less during market downturns, they give their portfolio time to recover, avoiding the compounding damage of selling investments at low prices. Flexibility isn't just smart, it's survival. The hidden risk: underspending your life away. Now here's the paradox. While the fear of running out drives retirees to save more and spend less, the real risk for many isn't financial, it's emotional. Research from the American Psychological Association found that retirees who constantly worry about money, even when they're financially secure, report lower happiness and higher anxiety levels. In other words, hoarding too much security can actually rob you of peace. You worked your whole life to afford freedom, not to trade one kind of stress for another. What smart retirees do differently? The happiest retirees don't obsess over every dollar. They understand that money is a tool, not a scoreboard. They build safety buffers, enough savings to weather downturns, but they also give themselves permission to enjoy their wealth while they're healthy enough to use it. They automate withdrawals, simplify portfolios, and focus more on life satisfaction than net worth graphs. They treat retirement like an art, balancing safety and enjoyment, discipline and spontaneity. And when they do that, something beautiful happens. Their money lasts longer and their life feels fuller. So, why do retirees' net worths keep growing? Let's wrap this up. The data shows that retirees' wealth often keeps climbing for 4 main reasons. They spend less than they expected. Lifestyle naturally simplifies with age. Their investments keep compounding. Even modest stock and real estate growth adds up. Social Security fills most of the gap. It's steady, inflation-adjusted income that takes pressure off savings. They're afraid to overspend. Caution keeps portfolios intact, sometimes too intact. The result? Many retirees die with more money than they started with, even though they could have enjoyed spending more. The real lesson. The biggest financial mistake people make in retirement isn't overspending, it's underliving. The numbers are clear. If you planned well, diversified, and stay flexible, the odds are in your favor. Your money will probably outlive you. The challenge is to make sure your joy does too. So, as you think about your own retirement someday, remember, security isn't just having enough to survive, it's having the confidence to live fully without fear. Because wealth that's never used is just potential energy, and life's too short not to spend a little of it on being alive.